On February 1st, 1960, Greensboro, North Carolina, 4 black university students walked towards a segregated F.W. Woolworth five-and-dime shop with a meticulous plan to fight against racial exclusion. They speculated for a moment about what would happen to them. They could get beaten to a pulp, they can get expelled from school, or even arrested. But that didn't stop them from walking. What they did that day and in the following months will go down in history as one of the most important struggles in the civil rights movement and laid the foundation for the end of the Jim Crow apartheid in the United States. This is the story of the Greensboro Sit-Ins, which began on this day in Southern labor history. Just a few weeks before the sit-ins, student Joseph McNeil tried to buy a hot dog at a Greyhound bus station, but was refused service just because he was black. This was the reality of black people in the South at the time. Black people can get jobs and spend money on goods, but many restaurants and restrooms were limited to whites only. Inspired by the budding civil rights movement, McNeil got with 3 of his peers, Ezell Blair Jr., McCain, and David Richmond, to change the landscape for black people in the South. They set their sights on the F.W. Woolworth retail stores, which have long maintained policies of racial segregation. Black people could buy convenience items, but the lunch counters were set aside exclusively for white people. The plan was simple. After contacting the newspaper, they would walk into the store, buy a few goods, and sit at the lunch counter and ask to be served. When denied service, they would politely refuse to get up. And that's exactly what they did. The 4 students purchased some goods and kept the receipts, and they all had a seat at the lunch counter. A white server told them, "I'm sorry, we don't serve Negroes here." Blair responded by showing his receipt and said, "I beg to disagree with you. You just finished serving me at a counter only 2 feet away from here." They did not get up, and they kept asking to be served. One black dishwasher called them stupid, ignorant, rabble-rousers, troublemakers. Another black worker said, "You're hurting race relations by sitting there." The store manager went down to the police station, hoping the cops could move the students out of there. But the police said if they were behaving, there was nothing they could do. This was part of the students' plan all along. By making a purchase, they showed that their money was just as good as anybody else's. And by staying disciplined and politely asking for service, they didn't give authorities any reason to take them out. Before the meeting even called win, the students already knew they were making an impact. One elderly white customer came up to them and said, "Boys, I'm just so proud of you." No doubt that comment boosted their morale. Eventually, the store closed early and the 4 students left. One looked over his shoulder on the way out and said, "I'll be back tomorrow." On the way back to the campus, McNeil told the others, "I've never felt so good in my life. I truly felt like I had my going to a mountain experience." The students knew they needed to grow their movement if they wanted to make a real impact. That's why, that night, they went back to their campus and held a recruitment meeting. The next day, several other students joined them to sit in at the same lunch counter. And that night, they kept recruiting. The next day, 85 students from different colleges joined the sit-ins. Not just black students, but white students too. One student said to the college newspaper, after attending a mass meeting, "I was inspired to go down to Woolworths." By mid-February, sit-ins were happening in 11 different cities in the South. By August, around 70,000 people had participated in sit-ins at segregated lunch counters all across the country. Finally, after 5 months, Woolworths ended its racial segregation policy. In 1965, the historic Civil Rights Act passed, which outlawed any racial segregation in any place of public accommodations, including restaurants open to the public in the United States. It all started with the original Greensboro Four, but they knew it couldn't just be them. That's why they had a plan for press outreach, a plan for recruitment meetings, and other tactics anchored in strategy to bring more black students who would feel old enough to fight alongside them. What made them leaders is that they understood the need for a massive movement. Today, we enjoy many rights our ancestors fought and sometimes died for. And while a lot of things have changed for the better, some things haven't changed much at all. Many black people in the South still live in poverty, even while working a full-time job. We work for corporations that are making billions of dollars. Yet, us workers on the ground barely make enough money to pay rent, eat good food, take care of our kids, or get a proper education. That's why we study the movements against injustice that came before us. We can draw our lessons from these struggles and use them to build a new movement. A movement to make these poverty-wage jobs at Waffle House, McDonald's, Starbucks, Amazon, and more into good union jobs, because all human beings deserve to live dignified lives, even if we have to fight for them. That's what the Greensboro Four taught us.